Anomalies. Anomalies.
Anomalies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a program about things seen out of the corner of one's eye, about shadows and what lurks in those shadows. This is a program about the unexplained and the unexplainable.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. I'm Dan Hall, one of your guest hosts, and of course Dave Jinks is with me. And Dave, are you doing okay today?
I'm doing all right. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest. We both are in Olympia, and it's just raining and raining and raining. Weather
Is
says
that why we live here? Because it rains all the time?
because we love 10 months of rain. No, probably not. But
Yeah.
you get used to it after a while. But I'm looking out the window here. But I am looking forward to a lively discussion here, even if it's gray and boring outside. I don't think this interview will be with Denise Stoner, our guest. So why don't you get us started here, Dan, with Denise?
Well, we were talking before we started recording, I have briefly talked with Denise over the phone. I know she is an experiencer, and that has a certain meaning if you're into the UFO phenomena. We've had some people on our show that Denise would know, Kathleen Martin, and also Gwen Farrell. So we have a whole bunch of things we could talk about with Denise, but I think she also has some paranormal kind of perspectives that I'm interested in. So Denise, come and join the conversation, and we're going to let you kind of take this in the direction you want to take it in.
Oh, hello, everybody, and thanks for inviting me today. Yes, I remember speaking with Dan. We did have a good conversation, and so he's interested along the same lines as I am, that anything to do with UFOs, ETs, all of that type of anomaly, it's all related, especially to the spirit world. We are finding that out, and we're beginning to wonder if they come through the same portal. We want to include the Sasquatch in that. Did they all find it and they know how to come and go as they please? That's something we're researching.
You know, we've had several guests on our show talking about Sasquatch, and we're going to have another one here in a couple weeks. It seems like Ron Moorhead is going to be on with us. But there is a debate about, maybe we should just start with Sasquatch there. There is a debate about whether Sasquatch is just a flesh and blood animal, Gigantopithecus blackie. I know Jeff Meldrum from my old stomping grounds, Idaho State University, is a proponent of that theory. And then there's some more exotic views of Sasquatch. That might be an interdimensional being of some sort. So let's get your opinion about that, Denise. What is Sasquatch, and maybe why should we be interested in what it is?
Well, I think we need to know what we've got there, because they seem to come and go as they please and disappear when you're looking for them. I lived in Colorado for 20 years, and my dad lived in Colorado Springs at the base of a mountain that they had a road on called Gold Camp Road. And when I lived there up until 1985, that road was dirt. I imagine it still is. Not very many traveled it, but the people that lived there knew that some natural stone tunnels were in the area. And when it snowed, you could sometimes hear the Sasquatch call from the road below. And so I was really curious about it. And we took a ride up there and got out of the car and stood by the tunnel, and up from me to my left up the hill, I could hear an animal sound, and it certainly wasn't anything I would recognize. It was something otherworldly, possibly. The sound of the Sasquatch you would recognize after you heard it the first time. He has been seen escaping from, or not escaping, but leaping from portals, landing on the ground, and also being followed by UFOs as if they were waiting to pick them up. So my take on it is they are not anything we would recognize here, not on Earth.
Well, and there are a lot of interesting things out there that kind of raised that same kind of question. Well, so why do we need to be informed about Sasquatch, or why do we need to know the exact nature of this creature? Denise, what would you say about that? Why is it important for us to have that bit of knowledge?
We need to know, how are we supposed to treat these animals? What kind of respect do we show them? Where are they from? Their own planet? Or do they come from an area where other types of creatures or entities dwell? Do they know they're coming through a portal at times where the spirit world also enters and exits? It's just a part of the whole for me. I need to know where we're coming from. Is this a dimensional creature? Are we slipping into another dimension, or do others live there and they just know how to reach us when we don't know how to go where they are?
You think science basically ignores the question of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and not just its origin, but its existence?
I think that they do. They need to find something that they recognize, that they could say, okay, this is a form of ape, like you mentioned earlier. This is something that may have managed to exist outside of our cities and towns and woods, and they know after all this time how to get away from us, how to hide. They've got it down pat. And I just don't think that's the case. It doesn't open up to those that say they have those living in the woods near them, or if you go on a walk and there's one nearby and they warn you by tapping on trees, they know how to use tools. I went up to a river house in Maine, and I was taken on a walk, and I was shown, looking over a ridge, where a family of Sasquatch lived. And I think they felt that in order to stay there, they were to give gifts to the owners of the home, to the humans. So my friend there was discovering all kinds of fancy geodes and gems and so forth left on her back porch. And she didn't own them, and there weren't neighbors near enough by to figure out she liked those types of things. And as I looked over the bank, I could see a tent-like structure they had built after tearing down the trees. And as we walked along, the lady said to me, talk to them. So I did. I said, hello, if you're there, would you let us know? And she said, no, wait. They're going to be picking up rocks from the river and banging them together. And sure enough, they did.
Well, I wasn't able to be part of the interview, but Dave interviewed Mike Patterson, Dave from Ontario Sasquatch. He had some rather intriguing things to say about Sasquatch. And one of the most intriguing things, he didn't really have to say, but he furnished us a picture that a Sasquatch had actually drawn. That was his claim. Do you remember that, Dave?
Yeah, he definitely had some close interactions, and his view was similar, that that Sasquatch or Bigfoot is an advanced being in a lot of ways. And what Denise said a couple of minutes ago really kind of turned a light on for me. She said, maybe Sasquatch has figured out how to access this portal himself, herself. And I'd never really thought about it that way. I mean, but of course it makes perfect sense that if these portals, these areas of concentration where you can access another dimension or a shortcut to another reality, maybe Bigfoot, having been around for many, many decades, centuries, millennia, who knows? Maybe they have figured that out and we just haven't yet, or at least most of us haven't. So, regardless of their intelligence level in general, I suppose it's possible that you could just stumble upon one of these in one way or another. And that's kind of one of the things I know that Dan and I wanted to ask Denise about here is these vortexes or these nexuses where different realities come together. And one of them was something like the Skinwalker Ranch. So definitely want to get to that within the next, 45 minutes or so. But the idea that Sasquatch knows of things that all of our smart scientists don't appear to know about? That's kind of a mind-blowing concept to me, and a new one too. But it does make sense. Why wouldn't Sasquatch know? So the other question related to that is the UFOs, the aliens, are they working in concert, or do they just happen to know where the access point is? So what do you think about that, Denise? Is there any evidence in your experiences that suggests they're working together, or at least do they just coexist? What do you think about that, Bigfoot and aliens?
This is a personal opinion, but from my experiences, I'm going to say they are separate, possibly another dimension. They may be aware of each other, but not that they coexist. It's a type of thing where people, and I experienced it once, and I can't explain it, is walking through a kind of a cloud, but it has texture. It has a sense of, I guess I'd say heaviness. And you wonder where you're going. And then on the other side, you see something that's absolutely unbelievable that you can't answer. You don't know what's going on for sure. You have to kind of make something up. To explain it to yourself at first. But where I experienced that, I've been near vortexes, of course, in Arizona. I've been in a person's home where you could sense that you could slip out of time and space as far as Earth was concerned. But for me, I used to be a scuba diver, now retired, because I did things that I probably shouldn't have. And one was diving in the Florida aquifer, thousands of feet into caves. I just had a need to know what was in there. So I was diving, and this time it wasn't in the aquifer, it was on a deep wreck in the ocean. And it was nighttime. I loved night dives. And there was a group of just three of us. We knew the boat captain. He's a former Navy SEAL. And when we were surfacing, we stayed down a little longer than we should. So we were kind of decompressing on the anchor line, waiting to get surfaced. And it was really dark. And I looked off in the distance and I saw a cloud. Now, this was Florida with clear water. I took my light and shined it, and I saw the cloud start to wiggle and shift. And it got closer and closer until I saw that in the cloud were these probably inch-long little strips, and they had internal lights. They were lit up, and they were different colors: blues, greens, yellows, orange, you name it. They had a color, and they were swirling and dancing. And as they came up to me, I felt like they were putting on some kind of a show, inviting me to go through the cloud they were making. So I took my glove off. I took a vial out of my vest. I was intending to capture some, and I put my hand up and grabbed some. I knew I had them. Opened my hand, and they were gone. And the space I had pulled them from, there was a void there. They didn't fill it back up. They left that space empty. I continued watching, and I knew that if I followed them, I was going to see something highly unusual. I could not, because I had to surface, but it didn't just happen that one time. These are amazing little characters, dancing and swirling and twisting and flashing lights. And my husband saw them. We surfaced, and we had been diving with that boat captain for years. We tried to, explain to him what we saw, what we felt. And he said, I have no idea. Well, the Florida water down south of here was crystal clear. So he could actually see us below the surface. We asked him if he saw those, and he said, no, he did not. So that little show was put on just for us. Where would we have been taken if we had followed them or gone swimming through them? I don't know.
Just one of a number of unusual experiences you've had, I'm certain, reading through your history. Do you have family that has similar experiences, or would you describe yourself as a sensitive or an empath, or do you have family members who may describe themselves that way?
I'm an empath, and I have remained psychic since I have had these experiences.
Mhm.
Sometimes I can do it very well, sometimes not. It just depends. My sister was very psychic. There was nothing you could hide from her. If you tried to go somewhere and she didn't know it, as soon as you arrived at your destination, your phone would ring and she'd say, "Where are you and what are you doing?" So,
Sounds like that could be kind of irritating.
Well, that's not a power you want your sister to have over you.
no. No, and her nephew, I noted when he was about, I was visiting them in Wisconsin, and I noted that he would get up from his chair and walk over to the phone, and when he got there, he had his hand out and it rang.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So yes, we have psychics in the family,
So it
and
runs in the
some that
family.
will. Excuse me.
Oh, I just said it runs in the family, which is really a theme that we we hear so frequently in
Yeah.
talking with people who've had these experiences. And it has started very young for you too, I believe, right? I mean, we can get into
Yes.
that, but go ahead. I interrupted you there.
No, that's all right. And my nephew has always known, when the phone was going to ring, somebody was coming to the door, and sometimes he knew who they were,
Mm.
and shouldn't have. But yeah, hello, so and so. And after about 3 times, I said to him, "What are you doing? Do you know what's going on here?" And he said, "Yeah, I've been able to do this for a little while." So he was well aware of it. And he still is, and now he's gone into, he's become an audiologist. He works in a big hospital, the VA hospital in San Francisco. And he is just a person that wants to be caring for people. You see his bedside manner is amazing. Um, so I think that comes with one who's been taken.
Hmm.
What is of interest to me, and I think I'm hearing this in Denise's story, and I wonder about myself and maybe Dave. So some of these people have extraordinary experiences in life, like Denise, like her sister, like her nephew. And then there are people like me who are vastly interested in all these things, but not a damn thing ever happens to me. I guess I have to live vicariously through people like Denise and others to tell me these things because I don't experience it. So, Denise, what would you say about that? Are there, I talk to psychics who say, well, anybody can be a psychic. We all have psychic abilities. And then I go, yeah, but Dan seems to have been left out there. What would you say?
Boy, it's again my opinion, and I feel very strongly about it. I signed up for this, and I signed up for it a long time ago, and I just felt comfortable in giving, in going where I was taken. I might not have remembered that I did that, but as I grow older, I have some kind of recall or a thought pattern. I don't know exactly what you would call it, that I had agreed to this just long ago. And I don't mean just in this lifetime.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had Joanne DiMaggio on with us talking about past life regressions. And she wrote a book, which I'm reading now. It's just totally fascinating. It's about the life between lives. And she talks a lot about in her book about kind of contracts we make uh, to live out our life and learn certain lessons. But that idea of contract seems to be consistent with what you're referring to, that it's prior knowledge that comes from prior lives or whatever. Totally fascinating, though.
It is. I've had some hypnosis, but I had some recall prior to the hypnosis of choosing this lifetime. It was explained to me, it was talked about to me. It was just comfortable at the time, whether I remembered it or not for a while, a long while. Doesn't matter now. Because I know that's what I'm supposed to do. And I've grown attached to my ET that I call my escort, to the gray. And for the first time, I have noted that he's grown older. He looked the same for years and years. And suddenly I see him aging. And I've wondered about that. But I'm comfortable with it. And I recall and seeing prior to this lifetime, prepared to jump. And that's what it was. I was looking at something similar to a waterfall. It was double screened, and I could choose. I had it down to 2, and I had to decide. And they said, it's time now. You need to decide. And I kind of leaned to the right for that lifetime. And at the last second, I jumped into the one to the left. And it was a floaty feeling. It was extreme pleasure. It was like I felt energy all around me. And then I was here.
No, that yes is fascinating. I think I'm speaking for myself here, but as I get older, I do feel like more and more like I have a mission here. I don't know if that's I assume it's a common thing with humans. You know, they start asking the big questions, and some of us really feel strongly about the fact that we have a mission. And you, Denise, had specifically said that you feel like there's a reason, there's a mission for you. Do you have a sense of what that mission is specifically, and why is there even a direction that we need to go? I mean, is there an ultimate conclusion? Is there an ultimate goal? That's always been one of the biggest questions I've had, is that if things are not random, it implies that there is an end result eventually, or at least a preferred direction for humanity or the universe or both to go. What do you feel like your mission is in this lifetime?
You know, I'd be only guessing, and that's due to something that happened to me. And a lot of us who are experiencers have also had near-death experiences, many people. And when I was 20, I had a double stroke. I had no speech. I had nothing. But what I believe came to my bedside was my ET that I had known for a long time. I had a forensic artist draw her. She kind of looked like a hybrid. She had the wrong nursing uniform on. Everything was wrong, except she came to my bedside and said, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay here. She took my sheets that had a fluid on them, and Kathy Martin has my medical records showing they couldn't identify what it was. I didn't have enough of it. It was a violent purple in color that I had vomited, actually, for one thing. And the doctor wanted those sheets, and they couldn't find the nurse. He had wanted to send that to the lab to see what in the world was going on with me, because it was so strange. When I went in to have surgery, was being wheeled down the hallway, I had decided that everything was just too painful and that I was done. And I didn't realize that I had found the connection between the soul and the living brain. And I separated from my body immediately. I know how to do that now. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that again. And I went up to the ceiling. That's a whole other story. What I want to say is at the end of that, a voice said, you have one more thing to do before you can come to us. Pushed me. I felt it on my back, my shoulder blades, and I tumbled down the hallway right through the operating room door and went through my body, through my mouth, turned around, spun around, and woke up fighting and resisting being back in that vessel.
Yeah. Not again. I thought I was free. Well, I've got one more related question here. I'm kind of going all over the map. Then I'll let Dan ask his questions. I'm sure he's dying to ask. And that is that we have a history throughout human history, documentation of tricksters, pixies, fairies, elves, gnomes, etc. And sometimes, on rare occasions, you hear accounts of what we call aliens today in the 21st century as acting a little like tricksters. Certainly, we think that they can create screen memories and they can mess with your minds in lots of different ways. But I'm wondering, what is your opinion on the idea that these aliens may be just what we are seeing as tricksters in this modern era, do you think there's a possibility that they are related to the creatures of myth of the past, which not myth, I don't believe, but these creatures of the past that are considered to be tricksters? How do you feel about that comparison?
I don't think that's a good comparison. I think that has to be broken out into the paranormal world. And yes, they are full of tricksters. Some of them very negative. I don't consider that a match for anything ET. It's
Okay.
two separate planes of existence. But yes, they do exist. And people that grew up knowing that there were little people, they just were. My grandmother and grandfather came over from Scotland. So I'm just second generation Scottish. And I learned from the ground up what those little people were all about and what they were capable of. And when you lived in Scotland, you knew not to make those little creatures unhappy.
Mhm. Because they had nothing better to do than to come up with ways to mess with your head. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that and to torment you.
Right.
But then add a spirit to that. And there are some who just dwell here and just find a lot of glee in taking something that belongs to you and hiding it.
Mm.
And you won't get it back a lot of times unless you play nice in their sandbox and say, would you please put that back? Oftentimes, about 10 minutes later, you find that item. Oh, let's say a hairbrush. It'll show up in a potted plant.
So what you're saying is that what we're calling aliens, these entities, are of a different type, which again implies that there's an agenda of some kind. And my last question is, what do you think the agenda of the aliens that you've encountered is, as it pertains to your life here in this reality?
Again, just my personal opinion, but I feel like we are too emotional. We are just full of upheaval. Some of us worse than others. We are a warlike group, and they have somehow, the ETs, bred all of that emotional nonsense out of them and then some. They went too far. And there's got to be a way to better both parties. And I think that's what they're doing, is researching using DNA to make that happen.
Okay.
Well, a lot of things to process. So I'm probably focusing on something I shouldn't focus on in a way, because just one sentence. When you were talking about your NDE, you said something to the effect that whomever was communicating with you said, it's not time to come to us. Now, and once again, I'm paraphrasing, maybe that's not exactly what you said, but I'm curious as to who the us would be. Would that be ETs? Would that be some higher being? What am I picking up on there, Denise? And am I picking up on the wrong stuff, the right stuff?
I think you're picking up on just what the voice said. It was a strong male, a very strong male voice. And I felt like he was talking about an eternity type situation, a joining of spirits as far as all being in the same place of existence, probably some ETs, humans, and I don't know what else. And I think that he very subtly was telling me that I knew some of them.
Let's talk a little bit about your experiences with ETs, if you feel comfortable with that.
Sure.
How old were you when you first identified that there were agents that might be referred to as ETs, extraterrestrials? When did you first recognize they were in your life? Do you remember a particular experience?
Yes, I was 2.5. And people say, oh, you couldn't remember. Yes, I can. And why do I remember? Because I'm the type that I have to know all these things. So I had to put this together. My mom was in the hospital giving birth to my sister. My dad was with her. And for the very first time, I was without my mom. So I had my grandfather, my grandparents always lived with us, and he had been doing the dishes. So I went into a little room, it was like a little tiny living room, but it was, I guess, a playroom. I climbed up on the sofa and I was looking out the window. That's still a vacant lot today. I've had someone take a picture for me in Connecticut, and I saw this huge egg-shaped light, huge. It was just glowing yellow or gold kind of. And I looked and I thought it was Humpty Dumpty as a child. My parents read to me from before I even knew what they were doing.
Yeah, Humpty
So
Dumpty.
yeah, so my grandfather came through and I said, "What's Humpty Dumpty doing in the sky?" He looked out and I remember fear on his face. I remember that he had a dish towel over his right arm. And he said, I think we'll go upstairs and read our story and go to bed.
Oh,
So he took me upstairs. He read me the story, my favorite one of all time, Jack and the Beanstalk.
mm.
He had to read that 1,000 times to me if he read it once.
Mhm.
And he put me to bed. My wallpaper was all nursery rhyme characters. So I was looking in the wallpaper for Humpty Dumpty after he left. I didn't see him. And so as I was watching, a little character who looked like a monk stepped out through the wallpaper. He had bell-shaped sleeves, and one hand he was carrying a long, narrow rod with a light on the end. He walked up to my bed, and I could look right in his eyes. So I looked in there, and I saw these great big almond-shaped eyes. And he put his other hand out, and he just said, I guess it was telepathy because I didn't see any mouth move. I heard it. "Would you like to come with me?"
Oh,
Put my hand out, took his, and we walked out into the hallway. And he touched the wallpaper in that hallway with the light, and we walked right through it.
oh, that must have been a mind-blowing experience. So did you go out to see Humpty Dumpty? Did you go out and see that oval-shaped craft?
I have a feeling I was in it. When we walked through the wallpaper, I was in a big curved, like a brushed metal. It wasn't shiny somewhere. And the wall came down. It formed a bench, but the bench had no seams. You couldn't see where it had been welded into the piece, but it was a bench and it went all the way down around a corner. Just before the corner turned, I saw several children sitting on benches down there, and there was another miniature of these little entities standing in front of them with kind of like a clipboard or something in his hand, resting on his arm, and he was walking back and forth talking to them. I couldn't hear what he said. And they said, "We'll just show you for now. Just take a look and you'll see what's going on." And at that point, he took me back. We walked back through the wallpaper in the hallway, and I was put to bed and I went right to sleep. But he came back many, many nights doing the same thing.
And how old were you? 2?
I was 2.5.
2.5. As a 2.5-year-old, you wouldn't have any reason to disbelieve in anything you just said, right? Because as a toddler, you don't have enough life experience to know that that's completely impossible in an adult's view.
Yeah, you wouldn't. I thought it was
fear.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, that's a thing. It's better than any amusement park or any kiddie ride, So
Yes.
at what point did you start to analyze these experiences through the lens of an adult brain? Was there a point where you started thinking, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't, my friends aren't experiencing these things. People are going to look at me like I'm a little bit wacky if I talk about these things. When did you hit that point? Because I know everyone does at some point. You have to consider that.
True. Well, I had told my parents that I had a little visitor, and they said, "Oh, you have an imaginary friend." Of course, I was too little for them to explain that they had been taken. So they didn't. They just left it at that. And I thought that this was just amazing. And then my sister, whose crib was right next to mine, right flush up against my bed, And she was not only an escape artist, got herself trapped many times in places she shouldn't have gone as a little kid. And so I watched her floating over the top of her bed, come right over the top of the crib. And somehow all of the clothing, not clothing, but blankets and mattress covers ended up at the foot of the stairs. And she didn't do it. I watched her floating away. We had a door that led to a balcony outside our bedroom. My mom had to block that with big dressers, but she went right through the glass windows. So my dad thought she was doing one of her little escape things, and he built the bottom of the crib up all the way, it was about halfway to the ceiling, and thinking she couldn't climb on that. He was a carpenter, so he was able to make it solid. It was smooth, no bars. She couldn't get out. Well, she got out anyway. And it was because she was being taken at that point. And I just watched her go. It was fascinating.
And do you think your father knew what was actually happening, and just the extra construction was really a way to try to
That's
deal with
one,
it?
I don't know. That's one I'm going to have to say. I'm not sure. Um, he knew that he and my mom were taken, but whether he started to wonder about my sister, I don't know. She denied it all her life. It terrified her, and she was very angry at the ones that took her. So she didn't want to talk about it with anyone, which I feel badly about, because it would have helped if she had been able to share, but she wasn't. So after I became, oh gosh, I was in grammar school, getting toward 6th grade, and we had moved, my dad built his first home, and I was taken at night and sometimes left in a park. And I'd all of a sudden realize, you're in the park by your school. How did I get here? I have to get home. An entity would come, and I thought they were chasing me, so I ran. And we lived in a historic town called Wethersfield in Connecticut. No doors were locked, no windows, no cars, nothing. So I could just run in, open the door, go up the stairs to my bed, and that was it for the night.
And so when did you feel again the pressure of society to conform to a quote normal life that most of us have, that didn't include entities coming in the middle of the night? Was there a point, an age, where you realized that, hey, I'm a little bit different in this way?
Yes, I knew I was different. Teenage years. My dad had gone to school nights and wanted to get into aerospace. So he took a job in California, and the whole family moved from that quiet little town to California, Sacramento, California. He worked at Aerojet General, where Stanton Friedman worked, and a couple of other people that I can't think of the names right now, but you'd recognize them, who worked there. And I was taken in California. It doesn't stop because you move. And so I was very careful about which girlfriends I could talk to. It was actually narrowed down to 2 that I could say, look, this weird thing is happening. One gal that has just visited me, she came from Pennsylvania. She remembers me running into her home. And what I was doing was being chased by the same type of entity I had seen in Connecticut at one point. Very tall, thin man. And her dad had us sit down over by big sliding glass doors that we all had in our homes there. And he called the cops, and a young policeman came. We could see through those sliding glass doors his flashlight. We had very deep, long backyards, saw the flashlight, and then the flashlight started to move. You could tell he was running. And as he was running, he was headed for the gate between the homes. This entity leaned up against the sliding glass doors. I could see how tall he was. The top of his head disappeared above the framework of the doors. The cop came to the door. Her dad answered. And he said, I'm alone out there. I don't have my partner tonight, and I'm not going back there again. Got in his car and took off. So he saw it.
Jeez,
Yeah.
scary.
I want to be conscientious of our time here. Um, so I suppose if we got your book, if someone purchased your book, we could have a lot more complete explanation of your abduction experiences. So maybe we should encourage people to go out there and buy your book so they can read about that. But with the little time we have left, I want to take us to your interest in Skinwalker Ranch, because that is a place that really fascinates the hell out of me. So why are you drawn to that? And I think, if I remember our telephone conversation, you've been looking at some kind of technology that might help explain what's going on in that very unique place.
Well, yeah, the type of, for one thing, camera equipment we can get our hands on now using all in combination, in sync with each other, is the ultraviolet, infrared, and full spectrum lighting to go out there at night and patch everything up with cameras like that, wrap them in Faraday cages, which means wrapping them in fine coil copper, because some of these entities recognize that we're trying to capture their picture and they're not going to show. So to do things like that, to use temperature controlled laser thermometers, just anything you can get your hands on that is more modern today than it was, and go and sit out there. I saw, and I had guessed who it was, or not who it was, but where it was. I witnessed something transforming into, not at the Skinwalker Ranch, but in between that place. And there's the Blind Frog Ranch.
Heard of that?
I saw something transform into what looked like an upright wolf type creature. This thing is actually a female human, but transforms at certain times. And I would love to go out and attempt to capture that. You don't have to go on the ranch to see it.
When you talk about a human transforming into a canid kind of creature, the term werewolf comes to mind. Is that what we're talking about? Or we're just talking about some other kind of shape-shifting entity?
I don't think it's a werewolf. Again, my own opinion. A lot of others will think otherwise. I just think it's something that happens that possibly was manifested by the Native Americans in one of their ceremonies, or many of their ceremonies, something they use for protection, their well-being. And I think maybe it got out of hand, or someone was in the presence of that ceremony and whatever they were doing hit them. That's just a guess. But this is a woman who, unbeknownst to, I think, even her family, has this occur. And it's not a regular basis, but I witnessed it. I saw it. It was very quick. And then that thing that was left after the transformation took off. But there are some very sacred caves where I'm talking about. And in those caves, I don't think anybody should go enter them without permission of the Native Americans. I think they have things in there we'd be fascinated to learn about, but not our business.
But you've never been on the actual Skinwalker Ranch property, correct?
No, I have not. I have been in the area in between, and just outside the ranch, because whatever's happening there is happening for quite a distance along that road that runs by that entrance to the Skinwalker Ranch.
So not confined to just the boundary of the ranch, which kind of would make sense that it wouldn't be confined. So how do you explain a place like Skinwalker Ranch? Or I have some familiarity with the Blind Frog Ranch, but how do you explain places like that? We have one here in Washington that we've been talking with a guest about, just very weird phenomena in a physical space. So what's your explanation for places like that?
I think that I don't know if it's our government or if it's someone else, they have been placed there to witness some of these things, whatever they may be. And maybe that got out of hand. Maybe these entities are showing off for people, and maybe more got through that portal, that vortex, than should have, that were a little bit negative, a little bit wild, I would say. The people that lived on the Skinwalker Ranch, their experience was just horrific. I think they were chased away at that time. They were supposed to leave. They didn't belong there. But now, what is left? The dregs of whatever was under that ridge attracts UFOs, for one thing.
Yeah, very mysterious place. So Dave, do you have any other things before we let Denise go back to a rather exciting life, it sounds like? Do you have any other thing that you want to talk with her about?
Well, I suppose the direction I always trend is to try to tie things together, especially between things that seem to be very different entities or different phenomena. As Denise said at the beginning of this show, she thinks that they can be tied together. There's a common thread, at least. So my, final question to her is, how do you tie together? What is the common thread between all of these seemingly, on the surface at least, different phenomena?
I just would tie it together. I guess it's rather simple. The way I'm going to put it is that we all probably came from the same place of existence. I think that we're going to, some of us, see each other there and recognize the spirits as being a little bit different, but we're all there as far as development of where we're going, where we agree to go. There are many, many layers to this place of existence. Near death again showed me something that was absolutely amazing. I was a part of the whole. I felt it, but I knew everybody else could separate if we wanted to. And I just saw an outline of a spirit. So everybody's there. They are all there, and preparing for their next journey.
So it's just a matter of form. Form is different, but the underlying matrix, so to speak, is the same for everybody when you get to a certain level of reality. So we're do you feel like we're all working together in some way, even if we don't know it? Or do you feel like there are opposing forces that are trying to do one thing and someone else is trying to do another thing? And the big example of that is the supposed 50 plus races of aliens, or 500 or whatever it's up to now. I mean, is it reasonable to say that some of them have different motivations? You think of theories coming from someone like Linda Moulton Howe, Stephen Greer, all the big names in these fields of research. There's some pretty differing theories about whether certain groups are nefarious and other ones are well-intentioned and other ones just don't care about the humans. They view the human race as a parasite on Earth, or they're indifferent to us. How do you feel about the idea that there are differing motivations among these races? Or do you even think there are different races?
I do think there are other races, and we're just loving the wars, the turmoil that we have here. So it makes sense to say that there are some out there that are warlike people, that are the bad guys that have to be dealt with. And I just don't think there's much more to it than that. So eventually they're going to get caught, they're going to get calmed down or helped or assisted to go away back to where they came from. I don't think it's much more than that, really.
Yeah, and on one level, that's disappointing, I think, to a lot of us who look to what appear to be alien species and different intelligences, and some that maybe have been around for not just hundreds of thousands of years, but maybe millions. They're far advanced compared to the human civilization. And then the idea that some of them may have motivations that seem oddly human and selfish is it's a disappointing thought, because you like to think that we all evolve eventually into higher beings and more compassionate and accepting. Is that just a pipe dream that I'm, kind of outlining here, do you think? Or is that the ultimate direction that we will end up moving?
I think we're going to end up moving out of our own foolishness, but the vast expanse of space has all levels of developmental situations. And so, hence, the ones that are going to act up just like we do. And it's not that every single planet that might be a little bit ahead of us should be behaving, because they don't. And that's just my theory, my thought on it. And I feel pretty strong about it.
Well, Denise, I want to thank you for spending part of your day with us, your valuable time. Just to kind of makes me want to say, well, maybe we'll have you back again and talk about some things we didn't get to talk about. But I'm just very appreciative of you sharing your time with us today. So thanks for being a guest.
Thank you. It was real comfortable. I like the fireside chat
Very
type.
well. I don't think
Yeah.
there's no fireplace where I'm at, but I think if you want to characterize it as a fireside chat, that works pretty well for me.
All right. And thank you for having me. And sure, I would love to come back.
Well, I'm sure
Okay.
Dan would agree with me that we like your style, matches our style, kind of laid back, and I mean, considering the subject matter, you're very calm about all of it. It makes it seem okay. Even the weird, scary stuff that you talked about, it makes it seem, it's something we can talk about without freaking out.
Yeah, it is okay
It's
because
very
it's
calming.
there and it exists. And
Right.
so, yeah, true.
Well, thank you, Denise. I had fun too, and we'll hope to get you back and maybe get a little more time so you can go into detail about some of your experiences. We can learn some more about it.
All right. That sounds wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, take care, Denise. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.